Hello everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Marianne Hulat from the Claire Paris office, together with my colleagues Marc Schoenhauer and Joost Geurt, who you will meet a bit later. We are delighted to present you Together for AI, European and international partnerships. So we came up with this event as a celebration of the opening of our office, which is part of the opening of 4 other new Claire offices, as you may have seen online and through the video we just presented. So in a moment, we'll have the opening statements and presentation of Claire and the Paris office, followed by 2 panels, and then the second part of the event for a fun virtual networking experience. In respect to the panels, you will be able to ask questions and vote to prioritize some of them in the dedicated tab. We will try to pick up a few questions at the end of each panels, but we probably won't be able to answer all of them as we're a bit short on time. You will, however, get the chance to discuss the topics further with some speakers during the networking part of this event. I will now give the floor to Marie-Hélène Potra, Director of the European Partnerships Department at INRIA.
Thank you very much, Marianne, and welcome to you. It's my pleasure to open this session on this Paris stage of the Claire opening roadshow. Just a couple of words to present INRIA. INRIA is the French National Research Institute for Digital Science and Technology. It is acting as a bridge between academia and industry, and it aims to push new frontiers in research, technological innovation, and entrepreneurship. At INRIA, we conduct world-class research, support the diversity of innovation pathways from open source software publishing to the creation of deep tech startups. And in January 2020, together with the GPAI, the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, we concluded a partnership to conduct joint research and innovation projects on artificial intelligence. This agreement perfectly illustrates the willingness to develop strong collaborations with research and innovation partners to be more efficient together, also in larger networks within the European dynamics. Both institutes share a similar and open vision of AI as a critical technology underpinning most of our future activities and with huge potential socioeconomic impact. This paves the way for many opportunities both at bilateral and European levels. And leveraging on this tight cooperation, INRIA decided in September 2020 to host the Claire office and to become a driving force to foster the dialogue between AI communities across Europe. And well, here we go now. And I would like to hand over to Bruno Sportis, CEO of INRIA. Thank you very much, Bruno, for coming today. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie-Hélène. Hello, everybody. It's really my pleasure to take part in this launch event for the Claire office at Paris. I first want to thank all the colleagues who are strongly committed in building Claire for more than 3 years. I remember that Philippe Schlussalek of GPAI was the first one to share with me the ambition of Claire. I do not forget the other colleagues, of course, and this includes my colleague Marc Schoenhauer at INRIA, who explained me the key underlying issues for Claire 3 years ago. I guess that Marc is here and remembers that. Claire is a very ambitious project at the right time with the right people and the right organizations on board. I'm strongly convinced that research and technology organizations with a similar mindset, especially in our field, digital science, computer science, applied mathematics, have to join their forces in order to develop a common and coherent vision and to follow a joint roadmap for execution. And not only when a call for proposal with funding is open. I think that Claire is a project paving this way for AI in Europe with an open vision for AI, embracing a wide range of methods, of topics, of use cases. And such an open vision is required in order to deal with the fragmentation of Europe and to deal with the huge issues we have in front of us. From my perspective, the issue is to reinforce an open ecosystem with academia as a key pillar at the core but also with other stakeholders, also with, of course, innovative companies, whatever the size is. I think that Claire has the right vision for such an ecosystem where AI is not in isolation, so to speak. And this motivates the design of Claire as a large inclusive network to create a space where all these actors, all these stakeholders can interact, where all domains of AI can also be recognized. From the INRIA perspective, this is also a tool in order to build the digital sovereignty of Europe. Of course, we do not have probably or for sure the same definition of what the digital sovereignty of Europe is or could be. It's not actually easy to define. I know that this could include a wide range of goals, of topics, of values, of actions. My definition is therefore an open definition, but I'm convinced that we have to be able to invest in research, that we have to be able here in Europe to master the key scientific issues related to AI, whatever AI is, to be able to develop some key technological software infrastructure here in Europe, and also to choose the appropriate industrial partnerships to reinforce Europe and to reinforce the European companies and the European innovators, such as the European Innovation Council is trying to do. It's a question of strategy and of choices. And Claire defines a strategy and results from a choice. This of an inclusive network with an open vision of AI. We have also to guarantee for the European citizens that we do not build technologies, AI-driven technologies, that are not compatible with our values here in Europe, that are still under control. It's easy to build committees about the so-called trustworthy AI, to write white papers, etc. But this is not so easy to enter into details and to launch projects in practice with an impact. And this is the ambition of another initiative, the so-called Paris Center for Expertise, which is hosted by INRIA under the umbrella of the General Partnership of AI, the GPAI, in which most European countries are involved. And I guess that we should take benefit of the possible win-win joint actions for the development and for the success of Claire. What Claire is, the ambition of Claire justified the strong commitment of INRIA for the development and the success of Claire. This is clearly, without any ambiguity, the priority of INRIA at the European level for AI, and this is fully compliant with the French AI strategy. This is, of course, also coherent with our strategical partnerships with other European organizations, such as this established with GPAI, as said by Marie-Hélène. That's why that's really a pleasure for INRIA to host the Claire office in Paris. I want to thank all of you for being there, so to speak, and especially Cédric Villani as a designer of the French National AI Strategy and as a member of the French Parliament. It's an honor for me and for INRIA to welcome him for this event. Thanks, everybody.
So thank you very much for those inspiring words. So Cédric Villani is actually having a public hearing at the same time as our event, so he could not make it. But we are now delighted to present you a short video message that he kindly recorded for us.
Hello, this is Cédric Villani, mathematician, member of parliament. So honored to be part of this important launch. As we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of COVID-19, we see that the world has changed in the past year. Economic tension has grown between continents, and this is bad news. Democracy has gone down all throughout the world, and this is bad news. But Europe has started to strengthen its institutional response to the crisis in particular, and that is good news. Digital practice, digital processes have grown spectacularly around the world. US giants have made all-time records, and that for sure makes the situation on the battlefront of technology and algorithmics all the more challenging for Europe at the time where these technologies have received such a boost. It's high time for us to support this at European level, and at a time of brain drain, confusing debate, low funding, tendency to self-depreciation, it's high time to put forward the great assets of Europe in the field of research, education, training, and development of innovative algorithms. As a former mathematician, mathematician one day, always mathematician, not active any longer in research, but still a mathematician at heart. As a mathematician trained through the diversity of international encounters and projects, as a former member of the high-level group of the scientific board of the European Commission, as the public face of the mission on artificial intelligence, which was performed in the late 2017, beginning 2019, with such experts on AI as Mark Schoenhauer, and a report which was presented to the Prime Minister and President Emmanuel Macron, and also, of course, as a member of French Parliament, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome the launch of the Paris office of the CLAIR Network Initiative. Together for AI, European and international partnership, open to academics, industry, and associations. This goes precisely in the right direction that I have continuously advocated for. Reinforced collaboration between industry, research, and society to tackle problems related to AI and algorithmic development. Interdisciplinary work on artificial intelligence with the putting together skills and experiences and building a European network for exchanging students, professors, communities, platform for cooperation and building of trust, giving implication to our bright young people going into this direction, with the general goal to foster experiments, sharing of data and skills, and building the European sovereignty. European sovereignty is not just about economics and politics. It's also strongly in skills and training and building the future. Investing in the knowledge and science, something which is badly needed. It is my pleasure here to give my best wishes and wholehearted support and commitment to the success of this initiative. To the CLAIR people all around the world, to the CLAIR people who have the future in their hearts, I say welcome again and again and again in France.
So for those of you who do not know CLAIR, Morten Ergens will now present the network, its vision and values. Morten is CLAIR's Director of Innovation and one of the 3 founders. Morten, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Now, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today to celebrate the official opening of CLAIR's Paris office. My name is Morten Ergens, and I'm so fortunate to be a member of CLAIR's board of directors. And I appreciate very much the opportunity to say a few words on this important day. We, the citizens of Europe, we live in an accelerating transition from one way of living to another, from one reality to another. The image I have is of sitting in a comfortable seat in one of the famous French TGV trains, and I look out and I almost get scared by how fast the landscape passes by. That is the speed that knowledge, technology, and instant communication change Europe. Digital infrastructure and advanced technologies like artificial intelligence are at the heart of this transition. In the cabinets and parliaments across Europe, our elected officials have piles of documents documenting grand challenges for the year ahead. And when a politician is asked how she intends to approach the grand challenges in her portfolio, the answer is invariably knowledge, science, technology, education, innovation. Basically, they're all pointing at the universities, research institutes, and innovation drivers. And they are saying, help us out here. And so it should be. Europe has great scientists, great researchers, great universities, companies, research institutes. Europe is definitely great. We don't need to make it great again. And we have seen fantastic developments over the last 5 years alone. The modern economy is evolving. So staying at the top should be a low-hanging fruit to pick, but it isn't. We all know we are punching below our weight. Our efforts are spread out thinly and inefficiently. Excellent research in one country goes unnoticed by companies in another country. There are fewer startups, way fewer scale-ups, fewer entrepreneurial universities, but we're so close to leaving that behind. That is where CLARE enters the picture. CLARE is a true bottom-up driven movement by scientists and innovators for scientists and innovators. Since its start, it has become one of the largest networks of AI scientists, researchers, technologists in the world, with 3,700 supporters, with more than 2,000 AI experts with PhD level expertise, and more than 1,000 industry experts. CLARE's research network consists of 400 AI laboratories, research groups, and research institutes from 36 countries. Their institutions employ a total of 22,000 people. Europe now has a network of research labs and scientists in AI stretching from the northern city of Tromsø to Athens, from the smallest research teams to the large solid laboratories and research institutes. So, what is CLARE trying to achieve? Number one, CLARE seeks to strengthen European excellence in AI research and innovation. Number two, CLARE seeks to establish a virtual research and innovation ecosystem as a companion to Europe's physical ones. Number three, CLARE aims to establish a pan-European network of centers of excellence in AI strategically located throughout Europe. Number four, CLARE focuses on trustworthy AI that augments human intelligence rather than replacing it. Number five, CLARE works for a major increase in funding towards existing scientific strengths in AI, novel innovation opportunity, and key European interests. Number six, CLARE sees Europe's efforts as being AI for all, AI for good, with all of AI and with all of Europe. Now, CLARE believes Europe needs strong brand recognition in AI, just like CERN, Airbus, and the European Space Agency in other areas. So, why is this important? Let me give you 3 quotes. The first quote is, "Whoever controls artificial intelligence rules the world." A bit ominous, and it came from Vladimir Putin. The second quote is, "Artificial intelligence is the new electricity." Now, that's a quote from Andrew Ng, famous technologist and innovator who said this. And with that, he meant that artificial intelligence will become almost as ubiquitous and important as electricity. The third quote is, "If you want to decide your future, you have to build it yourself." Well, technology defines our lives. Technology influences the way we think, the way we view the world, the universe, and ourselves. What we discuss over breakfast, who we vote for. Many across Europe are concerned that we leave our future to others to build. And therefore, in France, in the parliaments and governments across Europe, an understanding has evolved. European digital and technological sovereignty must be a primary goal, and Europe must increase its sovereignty in the areas of AI, data, and robotics technologies. Today marks a part of our effort. These days, Claire is opening several offices over the course of 4 weeks, leaving us this year with 8 offices across Europe, in Zurich, in Oslo, in Paris, Brussels, Saarbrücken, Rome, Den Haag, and Prague. The Paris office has a key role in Claire's development. I will just give you one example. Just a few days ago, Claire incorporated, in collaboration with 4 other associations, ADRA, the AI Data and Robotics Association. ADRA is created to establish a partnership with the Commission to channel 2 to 3 billion euros towards key programs and projects in AI, data, and robotics. Half of the funds will come from the Commission and half from European industry. And I congratulate and thank the Paris office for taking on a strong operational role in this endeavor. The Paris office is key in developing a very important instrument for the Commission, for Claire, and for Europe. I could bring forward a lot of other examples, but I will leave it with this. And at this point, I would like to thank INRIA for their strong support for Claire and Claire's Paris office. It is the long-term strategic thinking of key European institutions like INRIA that has propelled Claire to become the world's largest networks of research groups in AI. So I would like to thank Mark Schoenhauer, Joost Grootz, Marianne Wildert, and their superiors who have made this possible. Thank you very much. And good luck moving forward.
Thank you very much, Morten, for this brief insight. We could definitely talk longer about all the exciting projects Claire has. My colleague Joost will now present you the structure and specificities of the Claire Paris office. Joost, to you.
Hello, everybody. Also from my side and on behalf of the Paris office, whose picture, so we have some slides maybe to present. All right, thank you. And on behalf of the Paris office, whose pictures you see here below, I'd like to also welcome you to today's event. So as Morten mentioned, so we're one of 8 Claire offices in Europe. So as a Claire office, we have general, so we animate or help animate the research network, and also the innovation network that is recently set up. So the innovation network is a network of companies that share our Claire vision and that wish to collaborate with us, making this a reality. So in the second half of the event, in the Gather Town, there is a specific stand both on the research network and the innovation network if you're interested to get more information about that. So but besides these general tasks of the office, every Claire office also has some specificities. So our specifics in Paris are around the global partnership on AI that was also already briefly mentioned by Bruno. So we have working closely with a network of civil society organizations that engage in a public dialogue. And thirdly, also what that the European Partnership on AI, Data and Robotics that I spend a little bit more time on later on in this presentation because it's fairly new, recently started, and I think it's an important initiative that you all should be aware of. Okay, so to speak a little bit more about our specialties. So as the Claire Paris office we like to be a gateway to a number of initiatives that are important to advance European AI. So one of them is the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, the GPAI, which is a global initiative set up a couple of years ago, and so India is one of is hosting a center of expertise. Another one is a network of civil society associations that are important to bring the AI dialogue also to the general public, and this is very important to get also them on board and accept the technology we develop and raise any concerns that exist and take away where possible. So the overall idea is to create synergies between all these different initiatives and work together towards a strategy that works for everybody. So a little bit more about the AI data and robotics partnership. So this is a partnership of the Commission that will be signed next week, June 23, which is set up by 5 associations. So BDVA, Claire, Alice, EuroAI, and Euro Robotics. So these are 5 associations that are very different, but what they share is an understanding that we need to work together on European AI if we want to make this work. So they set up one association called ADRA. That will be the private side of the partnership, and they engage themselves in writing a research agenda that will be updated periodically, and it will be the basis of the investment of the Commission and the private partners. And we can contribute to this agenda by engaging with ADRA through working groups, through writing of position papers to help shape policy and regulation, and also share with the different types of people that are active in the partnership. So it's important to engage with ADRA and with Claire as a gateway and one of the partners in the organization of the association. So I have a lot more to say about it, but if you're interested, you can come and see me in Gathertown later on, and I'm happy to discuss more. So one practical example to finish off my presentation on how we intend to collaborate together and how this practically can work. So this is a platform I'd like to introduce, Vision for AI, which is a messaging platform, much like Slack, so instant messages, which was developed in the context of the Vision project. And the way this works is that communities get a space where they can work together. So these we believe that community is important, and they get a space on this platform where they can work together, where they can discuss the topics they find interesting, and it can advance the project they are involved in. At the same time, all the persons that are in this project are also part of a general team called Vision for AI, which allows them to exchange between projects. So all the researchers or and innovators that are present on the system have the possibility to exchange and in a common dialogue. So we set up this platform a couple of months ago. We are discussing with notably the Network of Excellences to join the platform. Already a number did. So we also discussed with the AI for on-demand platform, the IDA initiative, and the ADRA association. If you're interested to join as well, you can visit this website or send an email to the address mentioned on the slide. So with this, I'd like to invite you to get in touch with us. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to discussing with you more, maybe via email or otherwise in the Gathertown the Gathertown application that we'll be using at the second half of our events. Thank you.
Thank you, Jos, for this presentation. We will now go on to the first panel on the priorities for industry, research, and policy collaboration, moderated by Emanuela Girardi. So please, Emanuela, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Marianne. Good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to welcome you to this roundtable. And we heard from Morten Irgens that we have this great excellence in research in Europe. And then we heard from Cédric Villani that we really have now to put forward these great assets that we have in Europe. So today, in this roundtable, we will discuss about how this European international partnership from that is just been presented from Joost Geerts, can really achieve these goals. And so we will hear from policy, research, and industry, the different point of views, and we will do it with some very distinguished guests that I have the honor to introduce. So I will start with Cécile Wet. Please welcome Cécile Wet. Hi, Cécile. Cécile, she's the Deputy Head of Unit Robotics and Artificial Intelligence Innovation and Excellence at the European Commission. And this is the unit that under Horizon 2020 launched one of the world's largest civilian program in robotics with a budget of over 700 million, which had been supplemented by 2 additional billions from European robotics industry in the context of the robotic private-public partnership. And this is also the unit that is at the heart of all the important AI documents that have been released by the European Commission, like the communication on AI for Europe, the coordinated plan on artificial intelligence, and the communication on building trust.
I think we lost Emanuela.
Oh, it's not me then.
Let me check. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Emanuela. We can hear you.
Okay. Well, did you lose me? Did you lose me halfway, probably, when I was presenting Cécile?
Yes, roughly.
Okay, so we'll recap from the last part. Okay, so Cécile, she is part of this unit that presented and elaborated most of the most important European documents on AI. She joined this unit in 2004, and since then she gave a great contribution to the development of AI in Europe. So thank you for joining us, Cécile. Our next guest is Renaud Vedel. Renaud is the coordinator of France's National Artificial Intelligence Strategy. So Renaud has served the French civil service for 20 years in the field of local development, security, intelligence, and technology policies. And he served the French government for 5 years as Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Interior and advisor on the international affairs to the Prime Minister. Since 2018, he contributes to implementing the French AI strategy, first at Home Ministry and then at the interministerial level. So thank you for joining us, Renaud. Our next guest is Marc Schoenhauer. We already heard that he's one of the main contributors of CLAIRE in France, and he is also the principal senior researcher at INRIA. He joined INRIA in 2001 after 20 years with CNRS at CIMAP of École Polytechnique. He founded the Tau team at INRIA-Saclay together with Michel Sebag in 2003, and he has been working at the border between evolutionary computation and machine learning, and is author of more than 150 papers. He co-advised more than 35 PhD students, and he has been the chair of ACM CIGEVO, and he was also the founding president of Evolution Artificielle and president of AFIA. And since we heard Cédric Villani in the beginning, he seconded Cédric Villani in writing his report on the French strategy that for AI that has been delivered in March 2018. So thank you, Marc, for joining us. Our next guest is Dr. Luc Julian. He is the Chief Scientific Officer at Renault Group. He was CTO and Senior Vice President of Innovation for Samsung Electronics. He directed Siri at Apple. He was a Chief Technologist at Hewlett-Packard and co-founded a number of startups in the Silicon Valley. And while conducting research at SRI International, he was also involved in the creation of Nuance Communication, that now is the world leader in speech recognition. And he is the recipient of Légion d'honneur, which is the highest order of France, a member of its National Academy of Technologies. So Luc holds dozens of patents and even finds time to write, and he is the best-selling author of the book, There is No Such Thing as Artificial Intelligence. So thank you for joining us, Luc. And our last guest is Julian Chiareni. Julian is the director of the Grand Défi, the Great Challenges on Trustworthy AI in the French Innovation Council in GPAI. So I was previously director of strategy and program at LIST, the Institute for Digital and Artificial Intelligence Technologies, with more than 700 researchers located in Paris-Saclay and Grenoble. And he implemented the strategy for several digital technologies, such as cybersecurity, AI, cyber physical system, and set the partnership between research and industry. And before this, he covered several positions at LETI, which is the Institute for Microelectronics and IT Technology, and he coordinated the Nanoscience and Nanotechnology program at the National Research Agency. Thank you for joining us, Julian. So we have such an amazing panel, and I really want to start right away. And I would like to enter the discussion with Cécile Houet. So Cécile, since you and your unit supported the creation of our ADRA that we just heard from Joost, and ADRA is this new co-program European partnership on AI, data and robotics, which is finally starting, as we heard that next week we will sign, the NYU will be signed between the European Commission and ADRA. So my question for you is, what do you think, which one should be the main goals of this partnership, and which are, in your opinion, the tools that we can really use to make this partnership happen? Please.
Hello, hi, and thank you for inviting me to this this very great panel. So it's a good opportunity for me, yes, also to engage with this community and congratulate the setting up of this this office of Claire in Paris. And we want to engage the whole community, and this public-private partnership on AI, data and robotics is one of the main instruments we have to engage with the community. We want really that the private side, which represents the whole AI community, brings together the whole AI. So you mentioned the 5 funding organization. We want to gather there the all AI stakeholders, the developers, the users. So it's also important to bring the industry on board. And the goal is to define the strategy for developing and deploying AI, data and robotics in Europe. So it's very important to have the stakeholder on board to define the strategy and then implement and engage in that strategy to make it happen in Europe. And so that's very important. So to also enlarge and bring, besides bringing those communities together, also enlarge and bring the industry together with us in there. And then in terms of tools, what do we have? So we already started the networks of excellence centers, for instance, and the goal of them, we invested already 50 million euro, and we are going to continue on that. The goal of that is really to bring the best scientists we have in Europe, and the goal is to make them joining forces to really address the challenges we have to develop and deploy AI in Europe. So bringing really top excellence together to be even stronger and progress faster together, but it should not be kept to them. They also have the duty to bring all the AI researchers in Europe to the highest level of excellence. So this is what we expect as well from these networks of excellence. And finally, the AI on demand platform, I will not cite all the tools we have, but this one is an important one as well, because we want to have this reference platforms and tools to serve all the AI community. It will serve both the research community where they can exchange results, tools, measure progress, to help the scientists to publish as well if it's a reference recognized by everybody. But it's also a tool to help deployment, because we want it to become as well a marketplace for European AI tools to really help visibility and facilitate deployment of any AI tools we have in Europe.
Okay, thank you, Cécile. Very interesting insight for us that we have to develop ADRA. So let's move to the French policy side with Renaud Vedel. Renaud, hi. So Renaud, considering the experience that you gained in coordinating the French AI strategy, can you please tell us your view on this new partnership and give us some examples of success stories that you already implemented in France and maybe can be taken at European level, also thinking about these tools that Cécile just mentioned us. You're muted. You're still muted? We can't hear you. I can't hear you. I don't know if the public can hear you. No?
No, there seems to be an issue with the microphone.
Okay.
Maybe look in your settings. On the bottom part of the screens, you have the audio and video settings. Or yes, try to reconnect. Maybe we can
I will move to the
speakers before.
I will come back to Renaud later. Okay, so let's move to industry. We heard Cécile, she told us which one are the tools from the European Commission point of view. So let's move to Dr. Luc Julia. Luc, I mean, considering your amazing international experience, I would like to ask you first, I mean, which one is your opinion about this new European public-private partnership? And then I also would like to ask you if you can give us some suggestions on how to develop it, especially for the startup phase, and which should be the key points to take into consideration to make it successful. Please.
So first of all, I mean, I hope you can hear me. Yes?
Yes, sure.
Okay, good. So first of all, I think that Europe has an amazing pool of talents. Right. So I really believe that AI is going to be, actually is always starting in Europe, because this is, where the mathematical birth is basically, right? So I really believe that we can, in Europe, in France, have a lot of very good engineers and very good researchers that are going to help to develop, AI even more. I mean, in terms of startups and in terms of how to find the right partners, I mean, the good news also is that in the past few years now, there has been a lot of development of startups and ecosystems in those countries, and we see a lot more new technologies coming from those startups, and I think that. For that, it's very interesting to do those partnerships between industry and those startups.
Okay, thank you. This is very interesting, actually, also because, I mean, consider the experience that you had, especially in the Silicon Valley. I think that, I mean, really trying to foster this startup environment, it's probably, I mean, it's a very good insight. So, thank you. Let's see, Sarah, Renaud, can you access the microphone now? Is it working? Not yet. I don't see Renaud anymore. Okay, so we'll go back to Renaud later. Okay, thank you, Luc. Okay, so let's go to the research. So we have the opportunity of having with us today Mark Schoenhauer, and I mean, since he is working at INRIA, and INRIA is majorly involved in ADRA and also in supporting Claire, I would like to ask you, I mean, Mark, at INRIA, you already participated in several private-public partnerships. Could you please tell us why the cooperation of industry, research, and policy is fundamental to develop a European AI ecosystem? And according to your experience, I mean, which should be the priorities of this new collaboration on AI, data, and robotics? You're also muted, so we have problems with the...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, sorry. Yes, so thank you for having me in this wonderful panel. Yes, about your question, collaboration between academia and industry, or research and industry, what we call the partnership. I don't think there is any one single best way of having this collaboration. I mean, first of all, we should, well, from my experience, there is always a benefit from collaborating, and I can remember some collaboration with some automobile industry that I will not name here, where simply by discussing and by setting up a PhD program for a PhD student, we unveiled some very interesting fundamental problems about multi-objective optimization and so forth. So there is always something to gain from the industry because they might get some solution to their problems, and from the research perspective because you might get new problems that you can then generalize and export anywhere somewhere else. The thing is that there's a whole chain. I mean, you can see this as a whole chain. You should forget about the sequential system where research gives solution to industry. This is really a succession of small chain links. So circular information must circulate. There should be this type of collaboration should be at all levels, and this is something that we're trying to do in India, because this goes from at one of the extreme of the chain. There are some pure research teams, and it's very important to keep curiosity-driven research team. That's fundamental, if I can say. But then you have all types of possible collaboration. You have some point-to-point collaboration, like the CIFRE PhD program that I mentioned. Then you can have also some, let's say, more tight collaboration with some national agreement between some group and India, for instance. This can lead to some joint teams or even some joint labs. And all these are different ways of having this collaboration, and all are very important for involving both research and industry in a really collaborative way, and not only, as I said, the sequential way. So I think this is even more important in these days of AI, where things accelerate tremendously, and so we must really, if you want to keep up with this acceleration, we have to really have these different types of collaboration. It's important to have them all.
Thank you, Mark. I think that really collaboration is probably one of the key to the success of this new partnership. Thank you. Renaud, I saw that he joined us. He joined us back. Can you hear? Can we hear you now?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. That's perfect.
Sorry, I was on Firefox and not on the main player.
It's okay. It's great that we can hear you now. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you, Renaud, considering the experience that you gained in coordinating the French AI strategy, if you can please, give us a view on this European partnership, and also give us some example of success stories that you already implemented in France, and that maybe we can bring at European level.
Well, partnerships are very important, because in Europe, in the past 20 years, we have missed the opportunities to build up world-class champions in digital. And we now meet those because they could fuel, if we had them, and finance the AI research and emulating innovation. But we have great tech firms like Dassault Systèmes in France, ASML in the Netherlands, Ericsson and Nokia. And overall, European AI investments only account of 7% of the world total, whereas our economic weight is 20%. So our industrial companies, and we have many, and of course, Julian is now a leading one in terms of AI. And our Mittelstand, they need to accelerate their digital transition and their adoption of AI. And in doing so, they could greatly benefit from a symbiosis with the ecosystem of startups and with the world of research in applied fields. And a network like CLAIRE, I'm sure that can help a lot in that matter. And also, we need to develop further entrepreneurial skills and the entrepreneurial drive among researchers. We have had some good experience. Huge efforts and achievements in the past 15 years have been made. But collaborative research can be even more effective in terms of transformation into patents and business creation. Layers of innovation policies, they have resulted in many incentivizing schemes. We have Carnot labels, like in RIA, that focus on market-driven research in public labs. We have technological institutes that build up everyday public-private partnerships in deep tech areas like Systemics. We have business-oriented competitiveness clusters like Systematic, and soon regional digital innovation hubs. This is quite enough structures now for deep tech encounters of talent and sharing of projects. But to leverage them, we need concrete roadmaps on hot business topics for AI. And I'm sure that a network like Claire can help detecting those techs that are mature enough to reach the market, and speed is a requirement for success. And also we need to develop, and Cécile does it with the member states, European data spaces and markets for stimulating the data economy. And now we are coming to see marketplaces, and this is a major pillar of the French National AI Strategy. So now the ecosystem of startups has become quite dynamic. In France, 450 of them specialize in AI. That is good. The challenge now is scaling up at the European level. And President Macron underlined this yesterday very deeply at Vivatech. The European digital market is too fragmented. The Americans still set the tone. So we need to reduce the barriers. And so to do that, more partnerships are needed between large groups, and I'd like to see the views of Julia on this, with SMEs and labs are required. And at some point, also, we have to face it, market consolidation, acquisitions, and investment exit will be needed. And finally, our legal system imposes very heavy constraints when it comes to personal data. And even if the aim of AI is to generalize, and therefore to depersonalize learning data. So we can hardly innovate in many fields such as health tech, ed tech, insurance tech without representative personal data. So let's develop a legal regime that is more favorable to innovation in data-driven programming, a special regime for secure datasets, sandboxes. And it's very important in AI because it's a new technology that's not easy to regulate. And finally, let's invest more in privacy tech. We are more demanding in this than other economic actors, so let's invent for ourselves the tech solutions that meet our own requirements and social choices. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Renaud, because I was taking notes. You gave us some very, very interesting topics that really needs to be developed at the European level. Thank you. And you also posed the question for Luc, which I will go after. I'm going to ask first a question to Julian. So basically what we did is that we saw, we heard very interesting suggestions from industry, from research, from policy. And now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, sorry, I heard some other. And now, basically, I would like to ask a question from Julian Kierany, because he's the one who is basically putting together all these different words on a daily basis. So, Julian, starting from, the very interesting project that you are developing at Grand Défi, and also from your personal experience, can you please, tell us which one is, your suggestion for ADRA's agenda for the first year, and also maybe from the medium term.
Thanks a lot. Thank you everyone for inviting me today. I'm really delighted to be there with this wonderful panel. I guess that it was mentioned by Luc and Renaud. In fact, the question of the ecosystem is key. We have to develop some more cooperation between industry, research, and business also, because we have to keep in mind that at the end we need to do business with some of the development we will do. So it's what we try to do into the program that I manage, which is the Grand Défi. So we try to bring together big companies, startup, SMEs, and laboratories in order to really tackle some specific challenges. In my program is Trustworthy AI for industry, but it could be implemented for other hot topic in AI, I guess. And the really main challenge is to find what is the common point between all these partners and take the time to identify this common point between all these partners with a big value in terms of research development, but also in terms of market opportunities, and try to federate all this ecosystem into one program, into one project with ambitious, and always keeping in mind that we need to develop research. But at the end, we need also to think about the transition activities. So I mean, the access to the market. we don't have to keep a linear approach of research, technologies, and after the market. We have to change a little bit our mind and try to federate into an integrated view of this approach. And I guess it's what we do in terms of development in the program. I think that there is some huge challenge for AI, especially regarding the regulations that is proposed by the European Union Commission. So my program is mainly on this topic. So we develop methodologies, tools, AI engineering in order to fulfill the compliance, because the question of the compliance will be key. For business, but also from an ethical point of view, to also have the confidence of all the citizens, etc., in using some new developments such as autonomous driving. So we need to try to identify some clear roadmap with the technical challenge. And in this point, partnerships such as Claire is really key, because you can help the ecosystem in order to federate, identify the right place to work, and try to federate all the institution and industry.
Okay, thank you, Julian, and thank you for mentioning also the AI regulation and this topic that if we have time, then I would like to ask also to Cécile, because I mean, it is the world's first regulation on AI, and so it is a very important document, and it's promoting the dialogue on artificial intelligence and on the regulation of artificial intelligence. On the other side, there is already lots of discussion about the impact that it has on innovation and also the impact that it has on the adoption of AI technologies. But first, before going back to Cécile, I would like to ask a question to Luc, because Renaud, he mentioned very well, I mean, he gave us some example of how to go from lab to market with these new technologies. And he mentioned that some of the main challenges that we have to face is really how to put together research institute, small and medium enterprises, and especially, I mean, if I think about the Italian, but also the French territory, also micro business, together with big companies like, for instance, Renault. I mean, from your experience, I mean, which one are your suggestions or your view on, I mean, on these challenges of putting together small and medium enterprises together with big enterprises?
It's very complex, right? I mean, we're not going to say that it's an easy task, but I mean, it's possible. So, for instance, you know, we just launched with Renault something that is called the Software Republic recently, which is basically, you know, adding a bunch of large companies, 6 of them, that are going to, you know, find some projects that can bring some research labs and some small companies together, right? So this is one of the initiatives that we can think about, and it comes, of course, with, you know, a fund. I mean, you need some funding to do that, right? So it means that you need to have some kind of, fund with VCs or some other kind of funds, but it comes with that. So it's very, very important. But I'd like to rebound on what Renaud and Julian said, you know, before about regulation. I mean, I think that regulation is definitely very, very important, but it's important not only for the confidence, you know, for the people, like we said before, or for the privacy, but it's also very important to get some kind of regulation around the energy. So I think that the Claire Center should definitely, you know, look also at all the problems that AI can bring, right? Because AI can solve a lot of problems, but AI can be also a source of a problem. And the energy problem, for instance, you know, is something very important that should be regulated at one point.
Thank you, Luc. And actually, Claire is also working on some feedback for the European Commission on the AI regulation. So we are collecting feedback from all the research institute and the AI expert in Europe, and we are preparing a document. So we are also, I mean, on this topic, because we really believe that is a very important topic. And on this topic, I would like to ask a last question to Cécile, because, I mean, as we mentioned, it is very important to have regulation, also to have legal certainty for industry, for company, for investing. Luc said that we also, I mean, we need money, we need to invest to make this happen. And I mean, what do you think about these comments that we get on the regulation, that it's kind of limiting innovation, or kind of putting a sort of a challenge on the European industry?
Actually, it should be seen the other way around. It should be a guarantee that the quality of the AI we are producing in Europe is high quality and people can trust it and adopt it. So the problem is not to deploy, it's to be accepted by the user. And if we reassure the user in terms of the quality and that it respects the privacy, the human rights and so on of the people, then it will be easy to adopt. And it will, as you say, give also more certainty for companies. If they comply with these regulation, then they can better sell their and give this argument to the user. You know, you can trust my system because it has been checked. It's in line with our values in Europe. So that's very important. And what is very important is not to only have a regulation, is to have also the funding and the resources to make it happen. So to have those systems which are more robust, which are more explainable and so on. So we need to do research. And then the last point which was mentioned about greener AI, we actually are starting a program to fund some of those topics to address the problem which comes with AI as well. We want them to be green. We want a greener AI. So this is a research topic we want also to support.
Thank you. And this is also one of the goals of the coordinated plan. So this twin transition that it's digital and green, of course. So, I mean, unfortunately, our time is up. And considering what Cecile just said, I just want to mention that basically this is exactly the vision of Claire. So to develop a trustworthy, human-centric AI made in Europe. So I'm really very confident that together with all of you, with the new partnership on AI, data and robotics within RIA, I mean, we will be able really to put forward the great assets of Europe and build something really great internationally. So our time is up. I really want to thank all our guests, our distinguished guests, for this amazing contribution that you brought in today. And thank you our audience, and of course in RIA and Claire Paris. And we will all meet up. We have the opportunity to meet up with the participants of the panel at Gather Town in the speaker corner. So we'll see you there in a bit for a bit of a networking opportunities. Thank you very much, and please continue with the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for these very interesting exchanges. We would have loved to continue this discussion further, but as Emanuela mentioned, we are a bit on a short schedule. I would now like to give the floor to Benoît Rotembourg, who will be moderating the next panel on the GPAI and responsible AI. Benoît, the floor is yours.
Hello, I hope you hear me.
Yes,
great. Morning, everyone. Welcome to this second roundtable. I am Benoît from INRIA, and I have the privilege today to introduce very distinguished speakers. And let's introduce them by reverse alphabetic order. Just for a change. So it's my bias today. Please welcome Dr. Yuko Arayama. She's executive director at RIKEN, which is a famous Japanese research center, and she co-chairs the GPAI working group on future of work, where of course AI has and will have an important impact. Hello, Yuko.
Hello, nice to see you.
Now we have Professor Raja Shatila. Bonjour, Raja.
Bonjour.
Professor Shatila is Professor of Robotics, AI, and Ethics at Sorbonne University. He co-chairs the GPAI Responsible AI Working Group, and I know he has invested lots of energy in taxonomizing explainable AI. We will discuss this later. Let me introduce Matthias Spielkamp. Morgen, Matthias.
Guten Morgen. Bonjour.
Matthias is a co-founder and executive director of Algorithm Watch. So for those who don't know Algorithm Watch, it's not too late. It can be considered as a watchdog, and we need watchdogs those days, monitoring and I would say unpacking the complex systems, taking decisions about humans, you and me. Welcome on board, Matthias. And last but not least, we have with us Karine Percet. Bonjour, Karine.
Bonjour.
Who had the AI unit within the OECD Division for Digital Economy Policy in Paris. She is in charge of the OECD.ai Policy Observatory and the OECD.ai network of experts. And in particular, Karine is involved in the task force that focuses on tools to implement trustworthy AI. So I've already introduced a few elements of vocabulary about AI, so trustworthy, explainable, responsible. It's a bit sad sometimes that when we describe AI, we use either fluffy terms or polemical terms or ambiguous terms. So I think it would be useful for everyone around the table and the audience to focus a little bit on what we mean by responsible AI. So could you please, Raja, could you please give us your perception of what is not a responsible AI? I think that everyone understands what we are talking about.
Well, thank you for this question. And I see that your unique way of thinking is by reversing the questions, actually. So what is non-responsible AI? Well, there is not such a thing as responsible AI, and there is not such a thing as non-responsible AI. There is responsible people, responsible governance frameworks, responsible development by people, the responsible use of AI, and therefore when you say responsible AI is the fact that those who develop, deploy, use these technologies are doing this in a way which we consider as irresponsible with respect to the values of society, of users, and with respect to the needs of society. The irresponsibility comes from the fact that sometimes applications are developed with an objective of, for example, harmful impacts. That sometimes the applications are developed and deployed which are not robust enough and may have catastrophic consequences in case of fault and failure, and which are not very rare, and that's an important point. And because people's values, users' values are not considered. So in very short statement, I would say that this defines in a way what is non-responsible AI.
Thanks a lot, Raja. And maybe you could give us a little insight on in the workplace. When there is AI in the workplace, what would be non-responsible AI in the workplace?
Non-responsible. To be responsible or non-responsible, this question reflects the characteristic of duality inherent to any technology, in particular AI, intended or not. It may be misused, harm people, or induce other negative effects. So you design, develop, implement, and deploy AI to make your activities more efficient, more effective, more comfortable, and more fun. But the reality may be different. So take the case of working conditions, for example. Imagine you are a head of human resources, and you're introducing an AI-based system to capture the intensity and the quantity of interaction among your employees, and to make recommendations, for example, in order to facilitate the internal communication and to make the working environment more fun and more creative. But it may work as expected, but at the same time, it may imply stronger control, to not say surveillance on your employees. So this depends on how you use AI. So I'm in line with Raja's point of view.
I'm not surprised. Maybe Matthias, we'll have a little bit of special focus on responsible AI made by administration and public services. I know you are watching a lot those conditions.
Yes, we do, but actually, in a sense, unfortunately, because controversy is always a little, more convenient for a panel if people start fighting a little. But here we can't really, because I agree with everything that Yuko and Raja said so far. Yeah, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Benoit. But everything is true that was said, and applied to this field of administration. I would just like to dig in a little deeper, take this chance that everyone has little time, so you can't talk about everything. And we think that these values of avoiding harm, but also being beneficent at the same time, and safeguarding justice and fairness and autonomy are the basic values that we would like to see achieved by what the public sector is doing. And then it goes without saying that if you apply any kind of automated decision-making systems, that's how we frame that, then you have to safeguard that this is the case. I don't want to toot our own horn, but what we just released a week ago is an impact assessment that is trying to do exactly that. And it was developed in collaboration with the public sector, namely the Canton of Zurich in Switzerland. So we have already sort of tested it and would be really happy if people could have a look at it. We published it in English. I'll post the link in the chat and let us know whether it works for them. Because what we think is to use AI and ADM systems responsibly, you need to first of all understand what they are doing, and you need to stay in charge of what they're doing, in control. And this impact assessment is helping you with that. And at the same time, it guarantees accountability in the sense that, if there are risks attached to the use of it, you need to make those transparent. And if you do all that, then I would argue that you are using and deploying an AI system in a responsible way.
Danke vielmals, Matthias. Very interesting point of view. And even if you agree. But maybe to create a little bit of disagreement, I will insist on asking Karine, if at the OECD level, do you see different ways or different perception of risk about responsible or non-responsible AI in the different countries? Do you think there is a discrepancies around that?
I think that what's important at the core is that everyone agrees that a risk-based approach is the way to go. And of course, there is going to be a difference depending on the legal systems in place and the cultures in place on where you set the red line. So that is for sure is going to be the case across OECD member countries and other countries as well. But just to add to what my co-panelists said in the past, and I fully agree. Also, sorry to be boring as well with what they've said previously, I'd add that systems that are not trustworthy are also systems for which there is not accountability of the actors throughout the whole AI system lifecycle, from design, data collection and modeling to verification, testing and validation, to deployment, and finally to ongoing operation and monitoring. And going back to this difference between countries of the level of risk assessment, basically, what we've been working on for the past year to determine whether and what risks AI systems raise that would make it not responsible. We've been working on a framework to classify AI systems based on their impacts for public policy through 4 key dimensions and 20 sub-dimensions. The 4 key dimensions being, first, the context or environment of the system in which the AI operates. Secondly, the data and input that flow from the context to the AI system. Third, the AI model itself and the technologies used in it. And fourth, the task and outputs that flow back from the AI model back to the context of the system. So all of these really, impact public policy. And then where you set the line. So from this framework, you can develop a risk classification that's quite granular. It goes into a lot of gray areas, so you won't just get high risk, low risk. You'll get sort of all the gray areas, which are very complicated, and that's what you're going to need to set. Different countries will set the red lines at different places. Thanks.
Merci, Karine. Thank you. And I think now that we have identified, I would say, risk notion and responsibilities of actors in the whole life cycle, development life cycle you have perfectly described, Karine. I think one question that rises immediately is, how do we mitigate those risks? How do we ensure that the actors are properly doing their job in building responsible AI in front of citizens or consumers? Matthias, I know it's a topic that is important for you. How do we ensure that it will be in the end trustworthy or responsible?
We need to have a quite complicated structure that is usually summarized under this name of governance. We need to have a governance of these systems. And although to many people who are not in the policy field, this governance term is a little hard to understand, I think it's quite valuable to use it, because what we need here is the combination of several factors, because governance can happen on different levels. You can, first of all, have companies, for example, developing these to say themselves that we commit to certain values. Now, if there is no structure for any kind of control, then this is usually only virtue signaling, right? So they're saying we are doing good things, but nothing comes of it. So it could then be added by a internal governance structure. So you have a complaint mechanism, and then at a certain point you have to understand, you have to accept. We think as Algorithm Watch, you have to accept that there can be no real governance without then laws. And these laws are, of course, they can be very differentiated. So it doesn't necessarily mean that in a law you have to say this certain application of AI or an ADM system is forbidden. It can happen differently. For example, it can say, as the European Commission just suggested, is that there is a risk assessment or something like this. But it can also happen on the basis of saying we need to make clear that companies and, for example, also public authorities have to publish certain information about the system, so then others, academics, civil society, but also public authorities doing oversight over this, can understand what is going on and can also then assess whether there is a problematic use of such a system. And in the end, and I'll stop with that, we need to have a good expertise capacity of the people who are dealing with this. And this includes not just the developers and maybe the vendors of these systems, but it includes also the users who are the ones who are using the system. And it also includes the affected in the sense that, if you are making some comments on Twitter or Facebook, you should at least be somewhat aware of what this then will trigger, because that is your responsibility as well. And you can't just say, the algorithm was responsible.
Thanks, Matthias. I think it's interesting to describe those three angles of view: the self-regulation part, the regulation by authorities, and also the auto-regulation by the citizen himself. Raja, do you share this risk assessment perspective too?
Well, I think the important thing is indeed, I would say first and foremost, the regulatory framework. One doesn't have to consider that a regulatory framework is a burden or is something that is going to stymie innovation. A regulatory framework is a prerequisite for trustworthiness. Why? Well, because you might have standards, you might have certification processes, and any developer, any industry that develops AI systems can adopt such or such standard, which might be ethically aligned. And also you can have certification, third parties certification bodies. But how do we, as users, trust those certification, third-party certification? How can we trust those standards? There must be, I would say, a kind of higher authority, and this higher authority cannot be but the government, which is from the people and by the people and for the people, right? So that you are actually confident that all the players, all the actors, the economic actors, but also the regulatory actors, which might be contributing to the governance process, can actually be trustworthy. So we need this framework. And then within this framework, several things can be delegated, several things can be under the control of the economic players, provided, of course, we are sure that they comply with the global regulatory framework. And what I'm saying is not just for AI, it's true for any technology. It's even true for food. When you go to the to buy food, you want to ensure that you are not buying poison, right? So who ensures this? Of course, the interest of the economic actor, but also we have a global framework which guarantees, in a way, that the technology that you are going to use has this trustworthiness. So it's a global perspective that is really important and has to be deployed at the correct level with the correct intensity, which is not easy. This is why we need this public debate, this reflection, to take into account the stakeholders' perspectives, the end users' perspective, and to define the best way to go for the benefit of development and use of AI in Europe.
Merci Raja, très intéressant. Karine, do you think that if we need to regulate the regulators, I would say, do you think at which level at the organization, at which level must it happen? At the national level, European level, OECD level? What do you think in terms of organization?
I'm not going to give you one answer because it really depends, and it's going to be all of the above. All of these are going to be appropriate depending on the types of issues that we're talking about. For some issues, we're going to need, transnational regulation. Some actually conventions and others are underway. At some levels are going to be national, some levels are going to be regional, and you're obviously at the European regional level is key in that regard. So there's not one answer. It really depends on the issues. And just to give a few examples, if for facial recognition, for example, we're even seeing municipal regulation. So there's not one answer for all of these types of different systems. But I do agree with Matthias and with Raja that we need comprehensive policy and regulatory frameworks. Again, depending on the issues, it's going to be at the international level, at the national level, or even subnational level. And we need to make use of, as far as the OECD perspective is really that we need to make use of a really broad set of governance tools, depending on the types of issues we're looking out for. And as Raja said, again, in every sector, when self-regulation is not enough, when the incentives are not aligned and the risks are not acceptable, then regulators need to draw red lines and set regulation to manage specific risks, in addition to setting this broad policy framework. But then, importantly, we have a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge that is taking place, that is self-regulatory. We have a lot of good practices, tools, use cases that can help actors to implement trustworthy AI systems. And so what we're doing, for example, right now is developing an open database of tools for trustworthy AI with many partners from all stakeholder groups, including governments, who also have developed tools for implementing AI in public procurement and things like that. And structuring these according to awareness and capacity building tools, also for society in general, technical tools like standards, process-related tools like audit or compliance or risk management processes. And what I mentioned before is really now, and that's our focus moving forward, is really, and I think also with GPAI, and we're hoping to work closely with GPAI on this, is really, how do we ensure accountability and digging into more depth into the tools, the tools to help us ensure this accountability of AI actors for the systems that they're deploying and operating. Thank you.
Thanks, Karine. And Yuko, maybe, and we will have after that to listen to questions and answer questions together. But in the workplace, we know that the laws are extremely different between two countries, and have been doing human resource planning software for, I think, almost 10 years, and I know something about the rules changing. How can we ensure that this regulation frameworks will be suited to the different kind of environments?
So there's no unique solutions. So I'm following the idea of Karine again. To the technical problems, probably the solution could be technical too. For example, in the case I just described now, we can, for example, anonymizing collected data for the external use, so and so. So this is the idea of responsible AI by design. But it could be formulated as a regulation, but quite difficult to implement correctly. Because it is not so easy to identify and listen up in advance, but to be the non-responsible act, because we do not have sufficient number of cases experienced on the ground, and we are still at the beginning of AI transformations. So in this context, up to now, the key here will be human, not just by putting a human in the loop, but based on the human-to-human relationship. I mean, the trust and share value among all stakeholders. So I'm joining, again, Roger's point of view.
Thanks a lot. Maybe we have a few minutes for questions. So for the audience, you can ask questions in the question place on the right of your screen. I think you can vote on questions even. So please fire, and I will try to find someone to answer your question. Don't be too shy.
So maybe, Benoit, because people cannot actually take the microphone unless we put them on stage. But if some people want to write in the chat, we can put them on stage to ask a question, or they can write it directly in the chat.
Okay.
Otherwise, Benoit, feel free to ask questions if you have some. That's the privilege of being the moderator.
Oh, very good question from yeah, I like this question. So thanks, Holger. Who will answer this question? I will probably take a non-European to answer this question. But I think she's very Francophile, so maybe it's not a good choice. Yuko, have you an opinion about a situation where Europe is the only one to regulate and the other countries are not?
Quite a difficult question. Basically, regulation is something that you are setting up when you have the ideal. Well, what's the challenge there? And still, as I say, there's so many things happening and it's evolving situation. So you should be flexible at the same time than taking care of some negative effects and non-responsibility. So there's no unique solution. That means even any European countries or other countries, we are just already in search of which type of regulation we should set up. So, but the important is really having space to share experiences and evolving mutually, and that's my answer.
I like this pragmatism. We have a second question from Ricardo. Which mechanisms can be put in place to encourage AI literacy and society participation in the decision about the developments? I think it's a very deep question too, of course. I know that Matthias has something to say about it.
Yeah, I do, and I'll try to make it really brief. There are two things. First of all, we need information that is digestible for regular people, you know, so not only on the expert level, but this is why Algorithm Watch, for example, is also engaging in journalism. We are publishing stories about these systems that can be understood by everyone who has a general knowledge about how the world works, right? Who would be reading general news also. And we are also collaborating with other media to spread the news in that sense. So journalism has a big role in this, and they should avoid this dichotomy of either being, apocalyptic about it, AI will destroy our world, but on the other side, also not argue that it's going to be the solution to everything from climate change to social justice worldwide, right? And then the other thing is that you can go even a little deeper and create public deliberation mechanisms in the sense that you have, for example, citizens' councils who are compiled of or convened of non-member experts and who can give a direct input to a certain defined question. And of course, I could go on about this forever, but just as a pointer.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very deep question. Raja, has you an opinion about the way to develop AI literacy?
Well, yes. Again, a great question, but AI literacy is something that can be developed in different ways. One way is to engage the public in events where they see in practice what AI systems are about. We have many events organized this way in Europe, and where specialists, startups, and the general public can come and meet, and people can be made to interact with the systems or contribute to develop the systems. So you have also to have some literacy in terms of, I would say, basic programming, which is much easier today because we have tools for that. That's really important for me. There is another kind of literacy, which is responsible AI literacy, which should be also oriented towards the engineers, also the companies, etc., who develop AI. That's on another level. And there's a third kind of literacy, which is oriented towards decision makers, politicians, those who are going actually to understand regulation or propose regulation, so that they know what they are talking about concretely. So and we as academic have a major role to play, and also the organizations such as CLAIRE to organize these interactions. And there are many tools actually already here in MOOCs and so on, but hands-on experience is important.
Merci Raja. And as the time goes, I will let Karine give the word of conclusion about AI literacy, for instance. What would you say here? What is your point of view?
Yeah, I would again agree with my co-panelists. I'm sorry, this is a very consensual panel, but I agree that it's about literacy at all levels, and our focus is primarily on literacy at the policymaker and legislator level, and so, for example, we have at the OECD the Global Parliamentary Network, and are working very closely with them. And with experts from the network of experts to bring those communities together. And I think, again, CLAIRE, GPAI have a key role to play also in moving forward, in bridging the gap, so to speak, so that, the policies can be informed by what's really happening on the ground. So at all levels, but I think it's not just policymakers, it's the general public, as was Matthias mentioned, but it's also, throughout the educational system, vocational training, and so on and so forth. But another point, just in closing, that I think is important to make is that we do, I think, as a society, need a little bit more evidence about what is not trustworthy AI, and so that's something we need to focus on, because we need to understand the actual depth and breadth of issues, across countries and industries, rather than often we're talking about isolated examples, but many of the issues of non-trustworthy AI will manifest themselves as incidents where deployed AI systems cause harm or almost cause harm. And so we really need to document those incidents to know where to focus our efforts. And that's part of the literacy building effort. So we're not talking about, as Matt just said, Terminator, catastrophic events, but about really what is happening, and have a sense of the actual extent of it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Karine, and thank you all for being consensual despite the frustration of this very short roundtable. I will let the mic to Marianne and Marie-Hélène, but please, for the audience, you can join us. Most of us will be on Gather Town in a few minutes, so please join us and of course, harass us with a few more questions. So I let the mic to Marianne and Marie-Hélène. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. So thank you for these very interesting views on responsible, or maybe I should say non-responsible AI and non-regulation. I will now give the floor to Marie-Hélène Potra for the final words.
So thank you. Thank you, Marianne. I hope you enjoyed the discussion that took place this morning. Well, to conclude the first part of this event, I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing their insights in what I believe were two very inspiring panels and roundtables. Thank you very much. We discussed about responsible AI, about trustworthiness, about the framework needed for this technology, and about the various perspectives of the different actors developing or using AI. We see also that the question of the ecosystem is key. Artificial intelligence touches upon so many facets of our lives, and it's therefore especially important to establish dialogues between actors and communities. It means all these questions are crucial for European AI to be a success and to stay at the forefront of developments. Well, while grounded in a rather academic-oriented research and innovation community, the French CLAIRE office likes to position itself as a gateway to connect the various communities in a constructive and effective manner, and to actively contribute to develop and to promote this responsible and trustworthy AI. Thanks again to our distinguished speakers and to the audience for being there and supporting the opening of this Paris office. I think you can find contact information on CLAIRE website. Do not hesitate to reach out if you want to know more about the network or about the activities of the Paris office. And thanks again.
Thank you very much. So thank you once again for being here today with us. Please bear in mind that the last event of our roadshow will be hosted by the Brussels office on the 25th of June. You can find all relevant information on the CLAIRE website. The first part of our event is over. We're now switching to the next part of the event to continue the discussion and start the networking session. As you can now see on screen, we created a mapping. Can you see it on screen actually? Wait a second, we need the presentation. But as you will see in a second, we created a mapping so you can see how it looks like. We chose Gathertown as we think that it's fun to engage with as a kind of virtual cocktail place with a Mario type of animation. In the room on the top left side of the map, you will find the speaker's corner. In the other rooms, you will find research organizations, civil society organizations, and the industry. So please go in the chat and click on the Gathertown link that has been posted. You will be asked to choose an avatar and put your name and affiliation. You will then have a short starting phase where you will arrive on an island. That's just the demo. Then you will arrive on our map, slightly less exotic, but very fun nonetheless. You will then be able to walk around, maybe go to the bar and talk to people as you get near them. You will see it's fairly intuitive. So we hope, that this fun space will permit us to connect a bit better in these weird times. In any case, I would like to thank you for your attention. I will now turn off my camera, but I will stay for a few more minutes. So if you're having any kind of connectivity issue with GatherTown, please write to me in the chat. And otherwise, I will see you in a moment in our networking space. So thank you and goodbye.